Today, to show you support, I want to extend a special thanks to my friends Jim Garnett and Jeremiah Basurik for their compassion and hard work in planning this event. I also want to take a moment to express my gratitude to the Creator for giving us the courage to come together on this day. It is heartening to see so many who are, well, this is many. It is so heartening to see so many who are united in hope for those experiencing homelessness, for those facing uncertainty in their core shelter needs. We are here to advocate for a cause that is not just a statistic, but one that embodies the very essence of our humanity. When we think about housing, we must remember that it's not just about roofs over our heads, it's about safety, dignity, and the right to belong. We are all aware of the rhetoric that comes from the political arena. We have heard the promises made by leaders who claim to care about our housing crisis, yet history often begs the question of how many of these promises have and will be fulfilled, or for how long. I have witnessed the game being played and what lies behind the curtain. Far too often there is nothing there but the illusion of action. It is like a circus where the main act draws our attention away from the very real systemic issues that are at play. As I reflect on the statistics surrounding homelessness and housing, depending on the source, you may see reports that suggest meaningful progress is being made. I have had the honor of advocating for Indigenous housing and can tell you firsthand that while there are pockets of good work being done, the reality is that much of the good work is being undone as well, such as the elimination of the Indigenous and End Poverty Edmonton roundtables. All the while, many of our communities continue to be in crisis. According to the Aboriginal Standing Committee on Housing and Homelessness, Indigenous homelessness is a human condition that describes First Nations, Métis, and Inuit individuals, families, or communities lacking stable, permanent, appropriate housing or the immediate prospect, means, or ability to acquire such housing. Unlike the common colonial definition of homelessness, Indigenous homelessness is not defined as lacking a structure or habitation. Rather, it is more fully described and understood through a composite lens of Indigenous worldviews. These include individuals, families, communities isolated from their relationships to land, water, place, family, kin, each other, animals, cultures, languages, and identities. Importantly, Indigenous people experiencing these kinds of homelessness cannot culturally, spiritually, emotionally, or physically reconnect with their indigeneity or lost relationships, end quote. Indigenous peoples face unique challenges when it comes to housing. The legacy of colonialism has left many of our communities struggling with inadequate housing conditions. Overcrowding, substandard living conditions, and lack of access to clean water and sanitation are just a few of the issues that plague our communities. Studies have shown that off-reserve housing has an average lifespan of about 35 years, while on-reserve housing lasts about 15 years due to systemic substandard building practices for First Peoples. We cannot forget that housing is a basic human right. It should not be a privilege reserved for those with deep pockets. On-reserve housing issues vary between communities and are influenced by such factors as remoteness, lack of jobs, and inadequate water infrastructure. Overcrowding is a common problem, leading to poorer health outcomes, with mold being a frequent factor in poorly constructed, overcrowded houses. First Nations peoples were nearly twice as likely to live in crowded housing in 2021 compared with non-Indigenous populations, 17.1% versus 9.4%. In 2021, over 1 in 6 Indigenous peoples lived in crowded housing that was considered not suitable for the number of occupants. 16.4% of Indigenous people live in a dwelling in need of major repairs in 2021, compared to non-Indigenous populations at 5.7%. That's nearly 3 times more than non-Indigenous peoples. And according to Statistics Canada, 37.4% of First Nations people living on reserve are in housing that is in need of major repairs. Such living conditions on reserves are often forcing people to leave their communities increasing the risk of homelessness. While making up only 5% of Canadian population, 35% of homeless individuals identified as Indigenous during the 2022 national point-in-time count. Edmonton's count are 51% Indigenous peoples. That's slightly higher than when I first started this work over a decade ago. After many years experiencing and advocating for the simple, decent treatment of the homeless with services and housing, I have seen many changes as well as many failures. We hear stories of families living in dilapidated homes where the walls are crumbling and the roofs are leaking. Children grow up in environments that should be safe havens, but instead they are filled with anxiety and insecurity. It is heartbreaking to see our elders who have sacrificed so much living in conditions that do not honor their contributions to our communities. Issues including family dysfunction, addiction, health issues, and violence are some of the causes of homelessness, which are linked to colonialism and historical traumas. Indigenous peoples are also face structural factors that can lead to homelessness, such as structural racism, landlord discrimination, criminalization, and unemployment. But there is hope. There are organizations, advocates, and community leaders who are tirelessly working to change the narrative around Indigenous housing. They are dedicated to creating sustainable solutions that uplift our communities. They are fighting for policies that prioritize Indigenous voices and ensure that our needs are met. However, we cannot do this alone. We need allies who will stand with us, who will lend their voices to our cause. We need everyone here today to take action to advocate for changes that are necessary to ensure that our people have access to safe and affordable housing. This is not just a matter of policy, it is a matter of justice. As we move forward, let us remember that we have the power to shape the future. We must hold our leaders accountable for their promises. We must demand that they prioritize Indigenous and social housing in their platforms. We must ensure that the voices of our communities are heard in the decision-making processes that affect our lives. Some actions we can take is cap prices of critical food staples, crack down on corporate profiteering, expand the supply of scarce goods, especially housing. 50,000 government-constructed geared-to-income social housing units need to be built annually until housing affordability is restored. These units should target people experiencing core housing needs and homelessness. Rents permanently set at no more than 30% of household income or social assistance housing allowances. Let us work together to create a future where every Indigenous person have access to safe, adequate, and affordable housing. A future where our homes are places of safety and comfort, where our families can thrive, and where our children grow up knowing that they are valued and loved. Indigenous peoples in Canada are the fastest growing demographic. While this sounds all good and well, we must also take into account the major cause for rapid population growth, and that is poverty. In closing, I want to thank you all once again for being here today. Your support is invaluable. Together we can make a difference. Together we can advocate for the change that is so desperately needed. Together we can ensure that every Indigenous person has a place to call home. Let us not merely be spectators in this fight. Let us be active participants and champions of our communities. The time for action is now. Let us rise together and demand the housing that is not just a dream, but a reality for all Indigenous people and then our relatives. Thank you.